Oh, you're way up.
Shall we start with roll call?
Unfortunately, we weren't.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go ahead and do roll call. It's 1 o'clock. Member Riley? Here. Sheriff Allman?
Here.
Member McGordy? Here. Dr. Miller?
Here.
Auditor Controller Weir?
Here.
CEO Angelo?
Here.
Chair Barash?
Here.
Member Myrtle?
Here.
Member Liberty?
Here.
Member Muschetti?
There you go. Here.
Member Diamond?
Here. All right, shall we start? Anybody from the public would like to express themselves regarding our deliberations? All right. Move on to approval of the discussion and possible action regarding expenditure report on Measure B tax funds.
Yes. So this is in your packet, it's like this. It's the same format we've been seeing each month. This is an up-to-date summary of the Mental Health Treatment Act fund. It's a restricted fund outside the general fund, and has deposits from the state for our sales tax proceeds. As you can see, at the top portion of my schedule, the revenues are through January 25th, 2018, and that includes the most recent state submitted sales tax month, which is November 2018. Remember, they're a couple months behind in distributing the sales tax. The amount for the November was $654,379, gives us a total to date of $5,366,283 of revenues. And then below are the same four expenditures that we've been showing. There have been no new expenditures since last report. And then a final recap down at the bottom of life-to-date revenue of $5,366,283, life-to-date expense of $199,048, and we have interest earnings of $15,943 for a current balance of $5,183,179.
Could I have a motion for, are there any, is there any public expression regarding the earnings? And
I just have one quick question for Lloyd.
Yeah.
Do you have a sense of why the August and September numbers are relatively high compared to the others?
Costco.
Costco? I don't know, is that what?
You know, I don't personally know the reason. The CEO and I are meeting with our sales tax consultant in the next month, in March. And we will be sure and see if they can let us know if that's why we see an increase in those 2 months. But I don't know specifically at this point what that's for.
Okay, thank you.
3,500 firefighters in town.
Maybe, yeah.
So may I have a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting?
Do we need to formally approve them, or is it just a report?
Are we on minutes?
I think that's the next item.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Having read them, I so move that we accept the minutes of January 23rd, 2019.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? It passes. Report from the chair regards the presentation to the Board of Supervisors about our last suggestion from the last meeting that we recommend the three issues being crisis residential, crisis stabilization, and Puffian to the Board of Supervisors to pursue construction of these facilities. And that was Tammy Chandler joined me with that, and this was accepted by the Board of Supervisors, and they passed on to their staff to proceed with investigation of building those facilities. Are there any questions regarding that item?
What's the status on that?
Carmel? would you like to-
Sure, I can answer that. So the board directed staff, as our chair has said, to begin the process of researching, which we have done. And we've started, and that's where we are, and you'll hear a little more about that with the next agenda.
One comment I'd like to make is that there was a recommendation that I thought was novel to include the training center, which is part of the Measure B initiative, along with the PUF unit, possibly in the old Howard Hospital. And I thought that would justify the amount of space that's there. I think that part of the question that is in front of us is how the extent of the funds and what we're going to be able to fund in the end. I think that the virtue of putting those two in the same facility is that they are part of the ask in the Measure B initiative. And the other facility, which was for housing conserved patients, I think would be a big cost-saving measure, but this might be more efficient in terms of making sure that we have enough funds to do what we need to do. Yes?
So, yeah, I'm not quite certain what you're saying. Are you saying that we should look seriously at Howard Hospital?
So one of the things that we have to build is a lock facility, either a psych hospital or a PUF unit. And we were looking at other options, and those were, the only ones we looked at were in cooperation with the acute hospitals, either UConn in their vacated ICU, which is already OSHPOT approved. The problem with that is it's only 6 beds, and the amount of funding would double if we were to increase that to 8 beds, which is still on the low side. The other option is to build a psych hospital in conjunction with the new Howard Hospital, which would be very expensive. That would have to be, we run into that problem about public money in a privately funded building, and ownership and future, and then the question of cost. And while that could be a reasonable partnership, I think that the amount of time involved and the expenditure, it would be a lot more expensive, and the ongoing expense would be higher. I think there you would have Adventist Health actually running the facility. But I think that we run into another problem, and that is that now Adventist Health is contemplating building office buildings, both in Ukiah and Willits. So they're already out on the limb. I don't think they would be very quick to add another expenditure on top of that. So in terms of the facilities we've looked at so far, we're left with the old Howard Hospital. One of the big problems with the old Howard Hospital is that it's a much bigger facility than we need for simply a PUF unit. I think that the idea of putting the training center in the same building along with the PUF unit helps to solve that, because both of those things are facilities we need to build.
So I thought that's what the county was looking into when they were investigating different
That's right,
facilities.
yeah. But I think that we can make recommendations as to the configuration as well. I don't think it's just the fact of looking at a particular facility.
I think it would be hard to make recommendations for configurations until we have that
Until we,
information.
which information?
that we're expecting from the county?
Well, you know, what we've done is to recommend to the county, and correct me if I'm wrong, Ms. Angelo, but what we've done is to recommend to the county that we build a facility. You know, I don't think anything has been decided as far as the configuration goes. And I think I would expect that further recommendations from us would be welcome.
I would be willing to make a recommendation to convert Ward Hospital at this time.
Are we still on your report from the board of supervisors?
Yes, is this,
So, right, I think we're
I think
going
he's
a
okay.
Yeah, we're,
little off.
I just want to make sure we're still on 3C.
Yeah, so if I may, Chair, I think certainly all the Jan, your comments are certainly well taken. And the charge from the board now, based on the recommendation, is to look at the crisis residential, crisis stabilization, and then the 24-hour psychiatric facility, health facility, inpatient. But the fact is that the Measure B initiative holds, I believe it's 10% of the dollars for a training center. So I think that Chair Barish is right to remind us that even though we're very much focused on what the treatment modalities are going to be that we're going to pay for with Measure B, there still is this money set aside for the training center. And given that there have not been any decisions made, I agree with you, and I don't think that our chair is asking for decisions. I think he's just putting it out there so that we remember that we have this training center, and it's part of the actual statute that there will be a training center, and up to 10% of the money goes for the training center. So I want to support the chair in his comments, and also say that you know, it's probably inevitable as we look at the stabilization residential and the inpatient facility that the training center will also be looked at. So thank you for that.
I just wanted to, it was an idea actually of Mike Adair, and I thought it was a good one. I just wanted to put it up. Yes, sir.
So thank you. I think it's a novel idea. I know there's been some public resistance regarding Old Howard Hospital. Some of the public resistance is based on fencing, some of it's based on security, some of it's based on, I'm not sure what, just not wanting it there. I think that the thought of putting a training facility in a place where there would be a psychiatric health facility would certainly add some safety and security to a neighborhood. And realizing that the approximate 10%, you know, 3.2 million or so monies that would be used for the training facility could be used in addition to other buildings in one spot would be a novel approach to it, you know. And I'm not sure what the City Council of Willits is. I would encourage us to have someone contact the Willits City Council and see if they want to weigh in on this. I appreciate at least 2 City Council people being in the room today. But it's important that we get the public outcry or public input on this before there's a public outcry, so we can have as much information as possible. So I'm welcoming when we have an opportunity for public expression to hear if there's any specific concerns regarding this idea.
And I would also, I appreciate your comments, and I'd also like to say that that any fears about a facility in Willits, a PUF unit or a training center or whatever we may start looking seriously at. Obviously, we haven't as yet. We're still considering options, but that any fears or resistance to the idea we take very seriously, and we would like to do due diligence in examining the just how much of a threat people's specific fears, whatever they're afraid of, may pose to the community. We certainly don't want to build a facility that's a threat. Yes, sir, Mr. Daniel.
Yeah, another clarification on what you just said about the potential of the existing hospitals adding inpatient psychiatric beds. Did you suggest that has been ruled out?
No, I didn't say that's been ruled out. Yes.
This would probably be a perfect time to segue into agenda item 3D that actually discusses more of these items, Chair, if you're ready for that.
No, I think that's fine. Discussion possible action regarding competitive bidding processes related to development of crisis residential. So these are the three facilities that were recommended to the board. Crisis residential, crisis stabilization, and 24-hour psychiatric inpatient health facility.
May I ask a point of order question?
Yes.
Are we still using our pens to indicate that we wish to speak?
Well, people have been, yes, sorry.
Okay, I'm not sure.
Apparently
I
not.
had something to say, I'm gonna wait, and because we're gonna probably discuss it during this item, but I
Well,
was.
why don't you finish what you were saying?
Well, I defer to, if this would be a better time after we hear on that item, I can certainly revisit it then if that's
I
appropriate.
do think we have moved past Chair Barish's report now talking about the facilities. So I think all of your questions and comments could fall under 3D. I don't know what Shannon had to say, but 3D is more about the actual buildings and facilities. So if we can, unless there's one more pen up that I'm not sure of.
Absolutely not.
Okay, so what we have, this item is discussion and possible action regarding the competitive bidding process related to crisis residential, crisis stabilization, and the 24-hour psychiatric inpatient health facility. And Deputy CEO Janelle Rawl is here, and for those of you that don't know, Ms. Rawl was with General Services when we had a General Services department, and then came over to my office as a deputy and has been the key person working in our county purchasing and contracting actually for, over a decade now. So Ms. Rawl I see as our subject matter expert here locally on this county process. Additionally, we have a private consultant that we have utilized really for over a decade, who is now a private consultant, and that is Sally Riley with Riley's Compliance Consulting. And Sally has a long history of working with construction projects and construction management, working at the state level, and is known statewide as an expert in construction management. And so we are getting Ms. Riley on the phone. And what you have, or what you should have in front of you, is a one-pager from Ms. Riley that basically talks about construction projects. And the information you have here comes out of the multiple calls and questions that my office has received around construction of these buildings.
Hi Sally, it's the Measure B committee. You're on speakerphone.
Hello, everyone.
Hi. And we also, I do want to take the liberty of saying that Lee Howard is in the room as well, and Lee Howard represents North Coast Builders Exchange. And so these are the people, Sally and Lee, that we deal with whenever we're dealing with a county construction project or a public project, whatever you want to say. So what we want to do today is just not spend a lot of time on this, but as Member Liberty asked about what's the status, the board gave direction a couple weeks ago. Here is where we are. We would like to let the Measure B committee know really about the process that we will be following, and I just want to say that we have to follow a legal process, and that's what we're doing. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Ms. Rao.
Just real quick, again, Janelle Rao, I'm with the County of Mendocino. Even prior coming into the county, I've worked with some local agencies. Rao and Associates might be someone you're familiar with, and have a lot of land use background in working on development projects. So when I came into the county, this has been a primary role of mine, even though as I've evolved around it. And Carmel just asked for a real brief, kind of short, sweet, and simple, because the board has charged the county with this task of now, here's what the Measure B committee has recommended to the board. The board accepted that recommendation and said, basically, now go ahead and tell us what the process is. What are the next steps? what are the options and what's the feasibility. And I've given you just a brief outline of that. You know, there's construction management involved, there's architectural design, there's design bid build, there's a lot of options in addition to feasible locations. What I will say is the county, we build buildings. They're usually pretty basic buildings. We are not experts in certain areas or matters of a 24-hour inpatient psychiatric health facility. Obviously, that's not something in our wheelhouse, so to speak. What we are presenting and will be recommending is that we obtain that subject matter expertise in guiding us through this process. Ms. Riley, who's on the phone, I myself have worked with Sally and in various capacities. She has 26 years experience in the construction industry and also has worked on some oversight committees that provided some governance to county and agencies in their conducting their business and actually holding us accountable to the laws that we're responsible for in conducting our business. So the information's in front of you. I'm here to answer any questions. Carmel also has that information. Sally provided what we asked her to, basically just to describe very, very briefly. Here's just an outline of some of what we as a government agency who are charged with using these public funds, what we will be responsible for when we're moving through this process. That's really all that is. It's basically defining, you know, the regulations as far as the DIR, public contract code, prevailing wage, just to give you guys a sense of that. We're not asking the Measure B, the Oversight Committee, to be the experts in this. And I know we're asking you to actually somewhat trust what we're doing as far as the process is concerned, because those of us that have been here, I mean, I've been in government myself for 20 years, taxpayers' dollars are important to me. And what we are approaching is looking at this in the most efficient and effective way we can while abiding by the laws that we're governed by. So I'm here to just present that. Sally, I don't know if you had something you wanted to add as well?
I want to compliment the committee, number one, because you've taken on a big responsibility, and it can get confusing. I want you to know, though, that I've worked with oversight committees on numerous occasions for public agencies to help guide you through a process and a program most of you have never been through before, because it's entirely different. And those of you involved in the mental health care and treatment, I would be lost if somebody asked me to provide that. I hope that I can be of enough assistance to you and to the county in guiding you through a process that is my life, unlike many of you. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I think that, you know, there are 58 counties in the state. We probably are the only county that's actually working on developing the services that we're looking at, and certainly a 24-hour inpatient psychiatric facility. Most counties are moving away from having their own county-based 24-hour
Very correct.
inpatient psychiatric facilities. We are moving toward developing one. I would say that we're fortunate because the people in this county, and I'm going to compliment our sheriff again for getting out there and doing the work he did to get Measure B passed. But the fact is, one of the reasons why government stays away from a process like this, it is a big process. However, we're doing everything we can to work as quickly as we can, but to also follow the rules. Because if we don't follow the rules on the front end, we're going to get bit on the back end. And so it is our job as government to protect the taxpayer dollars and to protect the will of the people here and our Board of Supervisors in developing these services. And so that's our intent.
And Carmel, if I could just emphasize on that for you and for the committee, is because the county is doing something different than the remainder of other counties, there will be many eyes on this, and that includes many compliance eyes from different groups, making sure that all the I's are dotted and T's crossed.
Okay, thank you. So with that, as far as the time frame, we've started. I can't tell you when we would break ground or when we would come back to the Measure B committee and the Board of Supervisors with a report on the research that's been done. I can tell you that along with Sally, who, by the way, is under contract with us, she is a general funded contract for this committee to know. But I do believe that there are subject matter experts that we will need to move forward. So we're beginning that process. I would like to have an open door with the chair of Measure B, that we include ACE as we move forward, and that we're back in front of the board and the Measure B committee within the next couple months. That would be my goal with the report. And that's what I have, and that's the best we can do today. But we are absolutely open to questions or comments or anything. And again, we have Sally on the phone, who is our subject matter expert. I know that we have Mr. Howard in the room. I'm not certain if he plans on speaking. And Janelle and I are here to answer any questions.
So are there any?
So Sally, Mark Myrtle, wanted to ask you a question. Are you mainly labor compliance, or are you compliance from the beginning of the project based on lowest competitive bid, design processes, or design/build? Can you help me out with that?
Yes, I can. I am on board from the very beginning of the process. Actually, in many cases, first dreamed of and thought of, look upon it more as a public works consultant. The labor compliance happens to be a secondary part of what I do because it fits into the public works area, because it's part of the law for public works. But I am very deep in the different delivery methods, as you may put it, whether it be the architect, the design bid build, the design build itself, construction manager at risk. There are various options.
Okay, I'm having a hard time understanding what, I know the board directed the county staff to create something, but I'm not quite sure what they're creating. Are they creating a bid package? Are they creating a scenario that we're going to work with? Are they creating, are we looking for a contractor that fits a certain model? I'm not quite sure what we're asking. Can somebody help me with that?
That was my question.
Yeah, my understanding is that that we make recommendations to the Board of Supervisors for building, and I'm not sure honestly.
The actual action of this committee, ACE took to the Board of Supervisors and read. So we should all remember the action that we voted on at the last meeting. And that was to recommend to the board, the county staff look at a design bid build process for crisis stabilization, crisis residential, and the 24-hour inpatient facility. So I'm assuming that 1 month later, this committee still wants the same thing. As far as what that process will be, we're very much open to suggestions from this committee as to how you think we should go through this process. We know that we have a county process that we have to go through, but we're absolutely open to any suggestions that you would like to make. So, are we letting out an RFP today? No, we're not doing that. And I think that when you're talking about the amount of money that you're talking about something that you want to be standing 20 and 30 years from now, and something that is going to make mental health services in this county better. This isn't anything that we could just snap our fingers and do. Whether we're doing it or whether a community agency is doing it, there's got to be some real thoughtful process here. And obviously that's evidenced by the people voting in an 11-member committee. So, we have this oversight committee, we have direction from the board. I mean, there's a lot to consider. So
No, I'm just asking a question.
yeah,
So don't get
and
me
that's
wrong,
fine.
don't get me
I just,
wrong.
I've
I'm
had so
asking
many
a
questions
question.
over the last 2 weeks. Excuse me if my voice is a little
Can
elevated.
I try to give a little clarity? So we've done every aspect of what you've, your examples. What we're looking at is first a consultant to define, again, construction management, develop an RFP. Bid, are we looking at, design bid? Once you have a construction manager, is that step one? And if you have the construction manager, then you bring the construction manager on team. But there are various ways to go about this. Right now, we're in the middle of, and the sheriff's very well aware of this, developing a jail expansion project. That jail expansion project involves many aspects of what we're also describing. In that particular instance, we hired an architectural firm. Prior to the architectural firm, we had a company on board that was assisting us with the feasibility and locations and assessment. The architectural firm has been on board. We're now out for RFP for a construction management firm team. From there, you'll design and develop a bid package. The bid package will be issued. You'll then have a team that will be assessing those bid packages, that will be looking at contract award. That's what the county's been charged with. We're just mapping that out. Go ahead, Sally.
Well, I think it's important for the committee to realize, and it's because it's a different way of thinking. You can't decide today or whenever, but you can't decide that, oh, we're going to put up a new building and we know that we're going to have $30 million over the next 5 years, so we can go ahead and build a $25 million building, because the process doesn't work that way. And that you got to have the money to spend it. So there's one. Number two is, even though it may seem like a long period of time for you, many of these types of projects take 7, 8, 9, 10 years. I think you're completely way ahead of that. That the feasibility of what you want to do, and that the county can sustain it lasting in operation costs and staffing. All of those things need to be looked at for the Board of Supervisors to make a decision on which pathway they want to take. It isn't a question of whether you're going to get what is required in the tax issue, because that's directed. And as an oversight committee, it's your responsibility to look at that expenditure. Sure wasn't for a gymnasium when that wasn't what you were directed to do. But as Janelle and Carmel said, this is a long process. It will move along quicker than many, because the county, in my opinion, is dedicating time and staff to this. But it may not be as quick as some of you think, that because it was voted in 17, that it's going to happen in 19. And I don't mean to sound like the bearer of bad tidings.
Mr. Diamond.
Yes, this is for Sally. This is Jed Diamond, District Representative from 3rd District to the committee. I think the question that I'd asked earlier, I see the relevance now, and it's a specific one, hopefully under either or both of your expertise, which is there has been some discussion in front of the committee about the possibility of utilizing one of the existing Adventist hospitals in Willits or Ukiah as an expansion of existing beds to address the inpatient psychiatric need that we have. And my question just is, from your experience or what you know, are there some conflicts or is there some concerns that we need to know about that would either exclude this as a possibility or would include the possibility of expanded beds as opposed to building a separate facility that we need to be concerned about, that you can educate us on with what you know?
Excuse be if the Board of Supervisors, if you recommend, and the Board of Supervisors decides to go with one of your existing facilities, any work done on that existing facility, because it is with the intent of public monies being used, will be prevailing wage. And I know that's been a big discussion before the committee, so I just wanted to get that one out clear. It also must go through all of the procedures that the county already has in place for public projects. So for instance, if you were going, and I don't want to mention a specific facility, but let's just say you were going into the old community hospital and wanted to utilize the rooms that were already there, and but obviously it needs some upgrades, remodels, things that would allow it to pass all the regulatory laws, because it will be a public facility. Every process in there has to again be through a public process procedure. If the owner of the old community hospital says, I'll donate it to you, it still is by law and precedent a public works project.
I think I might, just to clarify.
Does that help you?
Yes, thanks, Sally.
Another question related to that.
And we're looking at feasibility.
Yeah.
So when you talk about the feasibility, the board gave direction to research options under that terminology, options, before you can actually design or go out to bid. You have to determine what the feasibility is for your existing or future or potential locations. So we will be doing the feasibility study, so to speak, of is there an existing structure? If that existing structure happens to be a hospital, well, the hospital has various mandates associated with their expansion that I would assume would come into consideration for our board. You're then using public funds to develop a structure that's not publicly owned. And I know that I think our auditor controller has spoken on that as well. That would definitely be a determination that would come back to our board with, here are your options as far as locations are concerned. And when considering that, here are the pros or cons or options, whether it's pro or con, with each one. The old Howard Hospital, for example, would definitely have, here's the slate of information you have, what's available. There's other properties that may have been, brought into the mix that we would definitely be looking at and considering. So I'm not sure if that helps.
Well, you're touching on it. One of the questions that has been before the committee that I don't quite understand the legalities of, that's why I'm asking, which is if we were considering psychiatric beds within a hospital facility that was privately owned, and we're using public monies to expand, or what can we do that? Is that within legalities, or is that something that's not possible or not feasible or not generally done?
I think both Sally and I could touch on this. It's not the most, I would say, advantageous, because it does complicate it a bit as far as ownership. Public funds going to a facility that's not technically in the public's titling. We don't hold the title to that. Is it possible? Yes. There are many layers that would be associated to that. For example, let's just say we're Adventist Hospital. We would have to have and enter into some form of an agreement with them in order to have a conduit for the funding. The funding is, again, public funds, so they would be subjected to prevailing wage. I look to the auditor as far as, or the board and our CEO as an investment of those funds into a facility that's no longer than within the county's, it's not, again, in our real property portfolio then. So pros and cons, is it possible? Yes. From my experience, I think it's a larger venture than if you were to acquire a piece of property and develop it independently. But that's just, I just throw that out there.
That's what
I'm not saying yes or no or it's worse, but it's just, there are definitely layers in addition to.
Sally, do you have any comment about that?
Well, my first thing is that as much as you may not want to believe this, doing a project like that may end up taking you twice as long and costing you twice as much. Yes, it I'm more like Janelle, it can be done, the layers that you have to go through. I believe that that could be part of a feasibility study, but it's something that the Board of Supervisors has to look at and say, okay, people voted this tax in to have these facilities. When you do it into a private facility that's already existing, you have additional accounting requirements to say, have you gifted public funds if, I'm not saying it's gonna happen, if in 10 years, nobody can do this anymore.
Thanks,
Thank you, that's very helpful, both of you.
Carmen?
You know, in fairness, Ross has had his time a lot longer.
I'm sorry?
Ross has had his
No, you
time a
go
lot
ahead.
longer.
You go ahead.
All I want to
Ladies
say is that,
first.
look, it's never fun to deliver news that may not be accepted and have everybody jump up and down. But what I have to say is that I think one thing that I agree with, as Sally said, is that we are further along than it may appear. We have gone 12 months, the first year as this committee, bantering so much around, and we also got the assessment done by Kemper. What we know about that assessment is clinically, or regarding the services, it was a great assessment. But when it came to the money, the dollars and cents, there were more than one committee member that had a real problem with what was written in that report. So we can't just take that report and say, okay, well, here's the money and this is what we think, the board is going to spend. So I think that at this point, there's things that we do know. We know that there's 3 different treatment modalities we're looking at. So whether we're looking at 1 building, 2 buildings, or 3, we know we're looking at that for those 3 services. We also know that there have been locations that we've all talked about, whether it's the old Howard Hospital, whether it's one of the Adventist hospitals, whether it's Orchard, wherever it is. These are all locations that have been tossed about by this committee and thrown out. So we actually have information and we have a starting place. So while it may seem ominous when Janelle stands up there and says, this is the process, and it's like, oh my God, here's government again, we're just gonna throw a wrench in everything and we're either gonna screw it up or we're gonna make sure it takes 5 years to build. That's not the case. I think we're further along. And everybody in here has the same goal, which is let's get something done, let's get the right thing done. So my hope is that next month when we come in, we'll have a little more information for this committee. What I would like to do, I'm charged by the Board of Supervisors to get this process going. What I would like to do is not only keep ACE informed, maybe the full Measure B committee wants to appoint 1 or 2 members to actually work with us. I would welcome that too. However you want to proceed, but this is what we're doing. No matter what, we have to follow a legal process. And that will do, because that is the protection for the county, for the Measure B funds, for the people. We will do that, but we will do everything we can to get everything done as quickly as we can and in the right way.
Ross?
Thank you for recognizing me, Mr. Chair. So it's kind of interesting here. So what was agendized for the last month's meeting was a very specific pathway to read this stuff. For a combined residential crisis stabilization and crisis access facility, right? We agendized that. Now, my friend here decided that, oh no, we're going to go a different path, and everybody agreed to it, and it was a very now, notwithstanding some Brown Act issues going from this agendized item to this is what we decided on, but that's another story. But what we did do is we decided really to say, oh, here, why don't we throw this over the wall and let the county, the county staff decide, why don't we ask them to just decide what they want to do. And now it seems like we handed off the steering wheel to the bus and now we want it back. So it sounds like everybody's sort of second guessing the path they're taking. We decided that we want them to take their path. That's what we did. Not what, I kind of acquiesced, you guys decided this. But anyways, but here we are, and now they're talking, now it's growing past just the crisis residential, and now it's really growing, this discussion is growing into, they're taking on the possibility of a PUF. Like, that wasn't what was on the agenda.
It
but
was on
But that was the direction.
that was certainly not on the agenda last week,
Oh,
last month.
all right.
So, so anyways, this has grown to, we've abdicated kind of all our, not authority, but all our ability to recommend and drive the bus. But anyways, so here we are. So actually, my questions really were more on the order. So now that we have a construction supervisor, or whatever, is that the right one? Construction supervisor?
We have a consultant.
Consultant,
We have a consultant.
then is the general preference, is it a design build, does combined design build? I think that's what you were kind of asking, right? So what is the direction they're gonna go?
So,
I mean,
I really did think that Janelle summarized it as to exactly what we were doing. So could I ask Janelle to come back up, summarize it one more time and
Yeah,
go
maybe I missed
slower?
it.
Slower, so Ross could hear you.
I'll talk slower, yeah.
I thought I got it, but it sounded very broad. But anyways, I'll listen again.
Just slow. You said it. I heard you.
Let's give it a go.
Let's give it a go.
Is it like my wife
Step
says, you never
one.
listen, right?
Step one, so our first step is again, we've obtained Sally Riley, she's a consultant that has expertise in this field. Her charge is going to be assist us with determining, I'll use the feasibility term, feasibility of locations, that's one. To determine the approach, whether we're architecturally and then contract management, or contract management and then architect, and then design, bid, build. Each of those steps are a component of any one of these or all three, depending upon how we look at it. Could we do them all at once? Yes. Could we do them individually? Yes. So what we're looking at,
I did get that.
the options associated, what are the feasibility of existing locations? What's the feasibility of developing from the ground up? What are the options associated with each one of those feasibilities? Let's just say location A, B, and C. And then scope out. Here's our plan. We're going to obtain an architect. The architect will come in and look at the feasibility of X. Let's just pick Howard Hospital because it's out there. Let's just say we picked that. The architect will come in with us. There's already been somewhat of an assessment of that facility. We would go back in. We would take a look at it. We would then be able to, here's an architectural rendering. Let's hire a construction project manager. That construction project manager comes on board. That's part of the team. The development design team then puts together a bid package. You go out to bid. Now, whether that's for the 3 facilities, one of them, you could do it any mix of ways. I know that there's, under the feasibility, you're going to be looking at, the 3 types. So you have the stabilization, the residential, and then the 24-hour inpatient. Now, could you do them all in one location? Likely, yes. The feasibility will tell you that. Could you look at the 24-hour, inpatient separately? Yes. We'll look at the feasibility for that. But I hope does that give you it's not written 1 by 2 by 3 because the feasibility will likely tell us once we look at our options as far as locations, what the best next step is. He's still looking. No,
I did get that. And,
Okay.
and so a consultant was hired to help find a path down to answer some of those questions.
Correct.
And so what I was attempting to do was ask the consultant if, in fact, there was, so if there was a preference at this point, is there a leaning one way or another, on design build, and then also if they were leaning towards the recommended design by RCH. So those were my questions to the consultant, RCS, sorry.
And I need to, I'm sorry, just to put this in some ways, I hope you're not upset with this, but you're getting the cart before the horse. That
Okay.
until.
Well, I didn't know how far along the horse was, so.
Yeah.
The horse hasn't gotten to the trough yet. We're getting to the trough.
Delivery methods There are pros and there are cons. And the board of supervisors, I realize you make recommendations to them, but can't make those decisions until all of the pros and all of the cons are out there.
So, for example, design bid build, there's limitations to design bid build. Sorry, Sally, hang on.
Important.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Design bid build has some limitations. You mentioned RCSR QMC. There's the potential, because there are strict laws regarding design and operation, that we want to be very, very cautious in how we approach that. So the existing design, that'll be part of our analysis, whether or not that's even at the table. And that's something Sally's not even really kind of brought up to speed on, and she'll likely caution us, because we have talked about with her and briefly, and she's cited some code that says, you know, hey, by the way, you can't mix this. So I caution, I throw that out there, because you cannot blend that at all. But I'm looking at Shannon because she's had her pen up.
Yes, Shannon?
Yes.
I'd like to, I guess, paraphrase what I understood our action last month to be, and that was to direct staff to provide analysis regarding these steps for us. And so my understanding is that staff will perform that analysis and then present it to us in the form of discussion and action. So we'll have some decisions to make about that. Does that sound about accurate? Okay. So what I'd like
Chair,
to...
if I can say one thing, no action will be taken. Anything
Right.
we do,
This is just
no
research.
action will be taken. Thank you.
Research analysis, which I think we need, because otherwise we're just kind of pinging all over the place. But I do have a couple of questions. I think I forgot one of them already, but if I ask the other one, maybe the first one will come to me. It's not specifically stated in here, but my question is, will there be analysis on the operations of the facility as well, the operators of the facility, or just the physical structure of the facility?
The operations was not part of the original charge. What went to the board, operations was never mentioned.
Strictly
So
facility.
this is the facility, location, you know, size, whatever. We are not talking operations today. We are not talking operations.
Okay.
Certainly, this committee could
Yeah.
send another recommendation to the board. The board could give additional direction.
Okay. There were some conversations at the last meeting where we said, you know, speaking of cart before the horse, the operator may want to have some say in the physical structure. I'm not an expert on construction, but that might be something we want to consider. And then I think my other point that I had previously forgotten was that I appreciate the chair's outside the box thinking in combining facilities, but I think it's a really premature discussion. I'm not ready to talk about that training facility yet, especially since we do have concerns about how far this money will go towards these facilities. And I think it's really important that we prioritize the mental health facility aspect of it before we start trying to add in additional expenses. That's my 2 cents.
Sure.
With all due respect, with the exception that the training facility is clearly spelled out in the initiative that the voters passed. And to answer your question on, I think it's important we talk about, while we're not talking about the staffing for this, it's clear that the numbers that mental health has provided to us, the statistical numbers of how many people or patients and clients are going through this process that we're hoping to build these buildings for, that would be part of what the original build would be. So while we're not talking staffing of how many RNs and how many doctors would be needed, we certainly would be talking about how many clients are going to be served and patient turnout, right? Is that?
Oh, I agree with that,
Okay,
yeah.
thank you.
And there's good input from RCS on a design, you know, their preferred design for the You just have to read it, crisis residential, you know, those. that
Assuming they're the
try-
operator.
Right, so there's that.
Carmel's gonna put her pen up so that I don't speak.
We can't assume any one operator, unfortunately. And Shannon, I know you know that when you're talking about a process like
That was
this.
my
We can
point.
say
Sorry.
that RCS is our local subject matter expert because they certainly provide our services to the adult clients. And then move from there.
Thank you for clarifying, yeah, that was my point.
That's fine.
And, yes, Mr. Murphy.
So who's guiding the direction of the potential facility properties, locations? Who's guiding the county with that?
Well, you know,
Go ahead.
Unlike Mr. Liberty suggested, I don't think we gave up the steering wheel. I think it's a slow process, and one of the issues that I'm impressed with in this whole proceeding is how many aspects there is to this and how complicated they are. Procedures and laws and construction practicalities. I mean, I'm a doctor. Like you say, you're a welder. I don't know a lot of this. I appreciate all the support around the table. But my own understanding of what's happening is that we're going slowly and deliberately, and recommending facilities and then going on to further suggestions. And this is a discussion. Nobody immediately present is driving the process. We're all hopefully doing it collaboratively. Carmen.
First of all, I would welcome, and I said this earlier, Chair Barish, and I'll say it again. I would welcome certainly some of the committee members working with myself in my office on this, and I certainly, Mark Myrtle has some comments. Ross hasn't forgiven me for last month, so I would certainly welcome the assistance. Regarding the answer to your question, every facility, every location that we have discussed here, we have that information, and all of those locations will be looked at. So there's no guiding county staff or the board right now in any one location or one facility. We're looking at them all. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you.
We have to open it to the public at some point.
One thing I would like to just comment on, maybe it's not the place, I'm not sure, but I'd like to thank Jan McGrory for her outline of the Kemper report. I found it very useful last time. I appreciate it. Are there any further questions that the board has regarding all of this? Yes, Mr. Wood.
I'm just wondering if there's any way to speed up the process, like if a private entity decided to build this and then offer it to the county for purchase, if that would speed things along.
It's very interesting you mention that, because we have just recently pursued that whole question, and it appears, from my understanding, that the answer is no. But I would yield to Carmel.
What does that sound? That's my I apologize. So, Chair Barrett,
Never rings.
I would say that I am not the best person to answer that, because I'm certainly not a subject matter expert in this. I would say either possibly Ms. Riley might be the person to answer that question. So I don't know if she heard the question. Do you want Jan to repeat the question?
Sally?
Yeah, if that was to me, there was a beeping on the back.
The question was, is there any way to speed up the process of creating a facility, like have a private entity build it and then say, oh, here, county, you can purchase this, and we've already done all the work for you? Or perhaps a mobile building. There's some companies that have, I don't know what you call them, but they're structures that you just are all ready to go and you plop them in a place. Modular.
I'm really sorry, but I'm losing it with some background noise. Could we try that one more time? Sorry.
Could you repeat
yeah.
it? Did
Yes,
you-
yeah.
Yeah, it's you.
you-
Okay, we'll try this. I'll hold it.
Okay,
Thank you.
There we go. How's
so,
that?
yeah, can you hear me now?
Yes.
So the question was, is there a way to speed up the process? So, for example, if a private entity decided that they would build a facility and then tell the county, okay, we did this, you can purchase it. You don't have to go through all the work, we did it for you. Or perhaps a module, there's some companies that create mental health modules that can just be plopped down somewhere. Would this be more expedient, or is this possible?
Okay, two-part question. Number one, if anybody at this point builds the building and says, here you go, you're still gonna have a public works project that was covered, and it would actually trigger all the way back to when that building was being built, that everyone would have to be paid prevailing wage. Just letting you know, I don't write the law, but that's what would happen. Because it's already been discussed, it's an intent to get this built for the county. On the modular buildings, you still will have to meet the requirements of where you're putting them, any site preparation, those would still be county buildings. I don't know personally, I do not believe that would be faster. It would take, because nobody's going to build a modular that's exactly what you want. It may come close, but by the time you get everybody's input and what they want with the building, it may slow you down, not guaranteeing it would. I think I need to tell you, when I told you how long it could take, I'm not anticipating it will take that long to do a process, because I believe you're all dedicated to it. But as the doctor would know, I'm not going in and doing an appendectomy for him. I ask that you guys recognize that there are experts in this that can help you through the process. It doesn't mean you give up your input. It's just that it still needs to follow the process. Does that help?
Thank you.
Does that help?
So does it help? So it tells me there's no way around what it's gonna take.
It's 90% process, 10% product. It's the opposite of the private sector.
It is till the end. And for instance, you know, and how, when I say operations, it just shows how my mind works different. My idea of operations is that the public health, or the mental health funds are still gonna have to be able to pay for the electricity. I look at the electricity and the fact that doors work and windows do or don't open as part of operations, where I understand better and recognize that you're looking at staffing. And it's like we talked, that's just kind of a different language, and I recognize that, and we'll just adjust what I do and say, so we're on the same language.
Else, would you mind passing?
Here you go, I'm passing you back. You're in good hands with the doctor over there.
I hope so. If there are no further, I'm sorry.
I have a question.
Shannon, please.
I'm not clear what our action is supposed to be on this item. What are we being asked to do here? It's just a report, right?
Just a report.
Okay.
Just a report.
Thank you. It says discuss.
We're supposed to go.
Is that Ms. Elliott? Yes.
I just wanted, I was provided this paperwork from Sally and went through that with my planning and building person, Max Drowski, went through the public contract code myself, you know, and again, reiterating what I said before, trying to find a way to go around prevailing wage, all of that to get a faster product. You're spinning your wheels in the wrong direction, and it's something we cannot do as a county, so.
I think a little wheel spinning was required.
Yeah.
We got that bastard.
Is there any public, Is there another?
Oh, one last
Yes, yeah.
comment. And just to put everyone's mind at ease, in the construction climate that exists right now and the amount of money that we're dealing with, prevailing wage, private wage is really immaterial because the companies that are capable of building this are paying the public wage anyway. So we don't need to agonize about that. And that, I think that's pretty important for all of us to understand, is it's immaterial. Price that they're paying, public or private, is gonna probably be close to the same, so.
That might change in a couple of years when they're building though, right? Actually.
It
building.
could, it could not as well, so.
So you're saying it might hurt less if you just relax?
It's the same price, I guess, is to feel at ease, it's gonna be the same price.
Is there any public expression on this topic? Please state your name.
My name's Joe Bradley, and I'm here at the suggestion of Mr. Ullman, Sheriff Ullman. I have a 45-year-old son who's bipolar, and he's dealing with the system or the lack of system right now, and it's been pretty traumatic. And I've been listening to what you're talking about with facilities. The experiences I've had with him in the since 1996, and the different hospitals, every hospital that he has been in, and to put your minds at ease, I understand some of the people from Willits, and that's one of the things we're talking about. Every hospital he's been in the Bay Area has been in area that has residential homes around it. The hospitals are quiet, they're well kept, they're insulated. I saw no problems. One was in Walnut Creek, and that hospital doesn't exist anymore because of lack of funding and the changes in the California climate. The other one is run by Kaiser Hospital, and it's in Oakland, in the base of the foothills. And it's literally on a residential street. You'd never know it was there. So what I'm saying to you is to bear in mind that these hospitals are built to take care of people. You're not going to hear screaming and yelling and people running out in the middle of the night. That doesn't happen. That's part of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. These are really well-managed facilities, and there are neighborhoods around them. The other thing is, you're talking about where and how to do this, and I've done some engineering for the phone company, and I understand a lot of this, but has anybody talked to the people that built Howard Memorial Hospital to find out what hoops they jumped through and how well lit those hoops were? They might be able to help steer you in a direction to build a building or retrofit a building. And I like the idea that the training facility is there. And the other thing is, will it also train our law enforcement, our fire departments, as well as the medical staffs and the volunteers? Thank you so much for your time.
Hi, I'm John Fremont from Fort Bragg, and I'm changing the subject a little bit to let you know that half of what you have said or more, I could not hear. You need to have some enhancement of the sound to get people to come and listen to what you have to say, because I'm sure it's very interesting. Thank you.
Double down on that.
Amen.
Appreciate it. So discussion, item 3E, discussion and possible action regarding professional staffing and or resources for administration and project management support.
So
Do we still
I
have a
wanted
consultant on
to,
the phone? We do.
Oh, she can go off. So-
Thank you.
before
Sally,
we transition to that,
Thank you very much, Sally.
You're very welcome.
I'd
I
like
will
to-
talk to anybody soon.
Okay, thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Carmel's asked several times for input. I would like to give input on that.
Thank you. So we will include you in, and we can arrange some phone conferences if.
And
because
I would
live here on
like
the
for
coast.
others to join.
All right.
Yep.
Sign me up.
Yeah.
So we have 2. That's good. Thank
And
you.
that, we can get up to 5, right?
Well, we should probably try to stick with 3.
Okay, that's
So I don't know if
fine.
there's a third
I just don't
person.
want to be accused of guiding the whole process for everyone.
No one will accuse you of that.
Ms. McGordy?
Yeah, I'm wondering if you're appointing a subcommittee, is that the purpose of this?
I would say that the chair could do either. The chair could appoint a subcommittee, or he could just, by chair direction, just ask some members to work with staff, and I'm staff, to work with staff on the process, and I would welcome that. So
I don't think we need a subcommittee as such. I think that we meet anyway, and I think that it would be good to have further input.
Yeah.
Possible action, discussion and possible action. Oh my God.
The Brown Act Nazi, right?
So, Chair Barrosh,
Yes.
the item was discussion and possible action. The action was chair direction to have a couple of the board members work with staff on this process. So I believe that the language in this item, agenda item, covers the action that was just taken.
Very good.
Thank you.
So, any further public expression?
What are we on,
We
3C?
did 3D, now
We're on E.
We're on 3E?
Three.
Hold on, you guys.
I'm sorry?
Oh, you have it.
Yes, go ahead.
Hi, Carol Hester. Just a question for this subcommittee, or whatever you're going to call it. Should you have public input in your meetings, or are you just going to wait to bring it to this meeting and then have public input? I mean, there's a lot of brilliant people out there that could be maybe helpful to you. I'm not one of them, but
I'm sorry, Ms. Angelo, did you want to answer?
I can if you'd like. I would say that we won't be having meetings, we will be doing work. So the information will come back to this committee monthly as to our progress, and that would be the time to get input from the public. And then, of course, whenever we would go to the board, there's public input as well.
Mr. Dunn.
Just, would you be able to tell us kind of what you're working on in advance, like what you'll be doing between now and the next meeting, so we can just have an idea of what the process is?
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
I have a question on that. Can that
Nothing but this. That
agenda,
answer your question?
that agenda item, so possible action,
Yes.
would it be worth having as one of the action items on that agenda item? Should we do some town hall meetings, maybe in Willits, before we start bringing anything forward about Howard Hospital? Like a few of us go there and have a town hall meeting. Can that be an action item on that agenda?
I don't think it has to be. Chair Barish, I feel like we're kind of getting off base, but
Yeah,
but if I
I'm a little
could answer
confused
this
about what we're
question.
talking about anymore. So you were asking for other members of the committee? No, okay.
The only thing that I said and that I asked for was that, you know, county staff is charged with moving this forward. The recommendation came from Measure B, went to the board gave direction. We're moving forward. I have asked, clearly the Measure B committee is very much invested in this, so I asked for a couple members from Measure B to work with staff, myself and my staff. That has happened. As far as public input, we would welcome public input. That could happen at the Measure B meetings when we come back. It could happen at the Board of Supervisor meetings. As far as any community meetings or town hall meetings that the Measure B committee wants to have, that's on the Measure B committee. That is not part of this item.
Okay.
And if we begin to add additional steps to this process, I don't know how long that would take. But certainly, if the Measure B committee or any member wants to go out and have community meetings, you're welcome to do that.
Okay, I agree, I think that's a separate item.
So we should be on
Where's the last item?
3E.
We just covered that, is that?
No, we
We haven't moved.
No, we haven't even started.
Well,
We'll see how this one goes.
no, I thought 3E.
Okay, so 3E, this is the last item here before committee reports, discussion and possible action regarding professional staffing and or resources for administrative and project management support. A couple meetings ago, we talked about hiring a staff person. We did not do that. This committee didn't move forward in hiring a staff person because at that time, this committee had not given direction on what you wanted to look at. Now you have given that direction to look at these 3 different treatment modalities. And so this item now is coming back for consideration of the Measure B committee to actually hire a project manager that would assist with moving these projects forward. And that's what this item is.
So would that project manager be concerned with feasibility of locations and all of the things that was mentioned by Sally in her report? Is that what you're talking about? Somebody that we could look to for expert advice about the best way of moving forward with each of the projects?
This project manager would do just that. They would be a project manager. So their focus and their expertise would be on assisting whoever the groups are or the people with moving a project forward and moving through the steps. They don't necessarily have to have expertise in mental health, contracting, anything like that, but they have to understand project management and know project management. And again, it's up to this committee if you want to move forward. But I can tell you that, based on what we currently have, and there are a lot of resources going into this. It would really help the process to have one person dedicated to project management here. And they could, depending on how this committee wanted to move forward, we would have one person, they would be a project manager, they would report out to this committee, they would work with us. We could write the job description.
Yes, sir.
Is this a county employee?
It doesn't have to be. I mean, I'm open. I don't, we just put it on because I can tell you, you could only imagine the amount of time going into this. And so, if Measure B, if the committee is at a point where you think we need a staff person, this is not to manage the Measure B meetings. It's not to do minutes. I mean, Carla has all that handled. It's to actually work on managing this project. I mean, we're talking 1, possibly 2 or 3 major construction projects.
Would that management include fielding complaints about specific locations?
It can. We didn't write a job description on this, Chair. We didn't because not knowing really how the Measure B committee would want to move on this. So there's lots of options. Everything is open. The charge of the Measure B committee is assuring that the Measure B dollars are spent in the manner that the initiative was written. So whatever activities this person would do must meet that requirement.
Jen, did you?
Yes. Just from everything that the complexity, what we're doing, I suspect that that would be a good thing to have. My question is timing on it. That's why I was asking what the committee that now is going to be meeting with staff would be on your agenda, what you'd be looking at. And what this person might do, I think some, in my mind, would depend on whether we're doing a 1 or 2 or 3, you might have a different person depending on that. So I would be interested to hear maybe next meeting with you all that are meeting to see what your recommendation is, given what the direction is, both do we need somebody, what would we want that person to do, and the timing of when this might be appropriate to have a person. So I'd be interested in hearing from you when you have a clear sense of the input from the other members working with staff this month.
Ms. McGordy?
Having a project manager was one of the recommendations that the Behavioral Health Advisory Board made from the Kemp report, because the Measure B requirements are so complex. I'm not sure now is the time to implement that, because there's already things being put together. I mean, surely they could do that and provide a paper with the other stuff. But at some point, I think it's imperative, and I think getting a job description would be a good place to start.
I disagree entirely, and I think that we are stymieing the public. We're in month 14 of passing this initiative, and we have not made noticeable progress. And to get a manager, first of all, I believe it'd be impossible to find such a manager, but if one exists, a manager who can understand, if he or she can get a complete understanding of the Kemp report, get a complete understanding of the properties that are available, and what the intended use of Measure B funds are, I think that now is the time to strike. We can put this off for another year, really and truly, and we can meet every month and we can talk and look at each other. But I'm saying that we have to make a motion forward to get quality service returned to some of these patients. And I would love to move fast on this, whether it's a consultant, whether it's a county employee. I think that the employee is going to cost in the area of $100,000, $150,000 a year once you look at the expectations that we have on this person. And I say that we need to start looking to, and find them. So I disagree with my partner there, Jan, but let's move.
So you disagree with the timing, not that we need one?
I'm saying the timing is now.
Oh, okay. It's okay.
We need to ask the Board of Supervisors to allow the CEO's office to develop the job description and either go out to RFP or hire a county employee and hold this person accountable and have them at our meetings, understand what our mission is, and let's get moving on this project.
Is that a motion?
That's actually very good.
That's well, it can't be a motion because I said too many words, Carla.
Thank you.
But my motion would be to advise the Board of Supervisors that the Measure B committee recommends that we have a project manager now to assist the Measure B committee with what our goals.
A second?
Wait, I want to discuss.
Yeah, you have-
Okay, let's discuss.
We got
The second had to
motion
happen
and a
first.
second, now it's
Thank you.
discussion.
Okay, I think we do need some staffing for Measure B. District 4 Supervisor Dan Jurdy came up to me with a pretty good recommendation, and I think none of us really have considered, is hiring a person to go out and maximize our Measure B funds by getting additional grants that Measure B pays for. So there's hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of grants that we need somebody to put the time in to work in conjunction with our Measure B dollars. So if our 40 million can turn into 50 million or into $45 million, and we hire someone for 100,000 to get those funds. So before we hire a project manager, I'd like to have that be part of the job description if that exists, or have a consultant that works as a percentage or hourly or whatever to do that. If that needs to be a separate agenda item, I'd like to bring that to the table next meeting, but I think that's relevant to this conversation, so that's why I bring it up now.
Mr. Liberty.
So it sounds like if we're looking for a staff person, consultant, project manager, and actually I do agree we need somebody, but it seems like we need either we need a lot of different skill sets. And we're going to have a crescent wrench for a consultant, because so project management as far as facilities construction and siting and all that, there's a skill set. Finding matching grant funds, that's a skill set. There's and then knowledge about what is that person going to look like. I can't imagine you're going to find all those in a single body, and it seemed like you're going to need to have access to several. But I was going to ask you what you had in mind. What's your idea?
I think Jed had his pen up first. Did you?
It's along the line that we're talking about, which is I want to know more about what the staff is going to, what the next steps are that you're going to be meeting this month. And if you believe we need this person and what they're going to do, I suspect that would be a good thing, but I need to hear somebody who's looking at it in more depth than just saying, yes, let's recommend to the supervisors that we hire such a person.
Who's next?
So I think we kind of need a job description, and finding grant funding to supplement it would be part of the job description.
And Mr. Libby,
So I have to say that right now, there are two people who are taking part of their time to actually do the work that that this needs, right? To actually do the work per the direction of the board. And those two people right now are myself and Janelle. And so what I would say is that there is not enough internal resources to move this project forward. And if you think about, if everybody in here if you just think about what's needed to move this project forward, I believe that's what a project manager would do. So, so we can certainly bring forward a job description. We can write up a job description and bring it forward next month. I guess what I want you to think about is that we have just overlaid a major project on people who have obviously full-time jobs. And so it's not about doing the work, because obviously if we weren't doing the work or didn't want to do the work, we wouldn't be here. It's about how quickly can we get the work done. I certainly have made Measure B a priority in my life, and I've certainly has Janelle. But doesn't this deserve to have a project manager rather than someone who already has a full-time job working on this? So if you're asking what are we doing, we're trying to figure out who the subject matter experts are that can do this. And this project manager, they're not going to be the subject matter expert. They're going to assist us. I mean, I'm going to use the sheriff's wing of the jail again. Architectures, how many consultants have we had on that? How many consultants will we have? And that's one wing of a jail. We're talking, either we're talking 1 or 3 buildings or 3 services in one building. Who's going to actually just coordinate all that? So there's not one person that has all that subject matter expertise, but there's got to be someone who can project manage. We're talking project management. So, and I would say as far as grant writing, Mark, Supervisor Jurdy is right. If we can take 40 million and turn it into 50 or 60 million, that's great. The county does have grant writers. I would not expect a project manager to be a grant writer as well. If this committee wants to pay for a half-time grant writer on top of having a project manager, maybe that's something this committee wants to look at. But to have one person have all that expertise, we're looking for a superhuman person. We need one person to project manage this so that when we come back every month, that person can stand in front of you and tell you the progress we're making.
And the county has job descriptions for analysts, and we have for supervising analysts and so forth. So this job description is not going to talk about specific measure B, you need this, you need that. What this job description is for someone who can take direction from us, understand what our mission is, and to deliver the final product. So developing the job description is not going to be insurmountable. That's a couple-day job to make sure that we have everything that we need covered in the job description, so someone doesn't say, gosh, you didn't hire me to do that. So I would encourage, as I made the motion, I know we have someone at the podium with Janelle there, I would encourage this committee to listen to what the motion is, to ask the Board of Supervisors to have someone as a project manager. We'll leave it up to them whether it's going to be a county employee or a contracted employee. But thank you for understanding the specific need of this. Let's get moving.
Janelle?
I'll end on that note. I echo what the sheriff has said and what Carmel has said. I think what you might want to understand is that you've created this body by means of a tax initiative. This entire envelopment of the work you're discussing is not something covered within the county government structure right now. So what Carmel is saying, yes, she tagged me in. It was basically I lost Rochambeau, which is a lot of how decision-making sometimes happens. But you are starting a business, so to speak. And when you look at starting a business, you need to have resources to assist you in getting your work done. You do not have anyone here present to help you get your work done. The sheriff is correct. You've been kind of spinning a little bit because you haven't had, and it could be one person, maybe it's a third of three. Whatever that happens to be, you need that expertise. You need someone here to assist you. And, you know, quite frankly, Carmel's pulled me in, but we need more of me. And my priorities are assigned by the CEO and the board. She wants me here, great. I have a full other selection of priorities that I'm dedicated to. So I just want to make sure, we don't want to leave you here hanging. We want you to make this progress. In order to make progress, you need the resources.
Thank you.
I support moving forward with this action. I understand the need to support county staff. I also am sympathetic to the fact that it may be difficult to find someone with the complete skill set that we're looking. I do believe the county has probably a plethora of job applications. It's not going to take much to piece them together, and I trust their expertise in this area. My question is, in the event that we don't find somebody that can do all of these things, I agree that grant writing is important. Will we still have access to county services? So for example, there are lots of people on this board that have access to information, that hear about grants coming up. If there's an opportunity, could we utilize the county's grant writers on top of the staff person that we use? If we can't, can we supplement, not on a regular basis necessarily, but on an as-needed basis to make sure that we're getting all the skill sets met?
Well, my motion does not include the grant writer as a project manager. I think that as a project manager gets started, that we'll understand this. I hope it's not a surprise to anybody that Governor Newsom is prioritizing mental health for counties. He certainly told the sheriffs that. And to be able to use Measure B funds for matching grants is going to be a time that we can high-five each other. But until we get the project manager, until we start going almost to the point of having shovel-ready projects, then we're going to be having committee meetings to talk about getting a project manager.
Do you want to take public comment on the motion before we have a vote?
I think that sounds like, especially Tammy.
Yep, there you go.
Thank you, Chairman Barish. Tammy Moss-Chandler, Director of Health and Human Services Agency. I just want to echo the need that this committee certainly has for project management support, and just voice our commitment as a county around grant writing support to supplement and explore this. I know alone in the last 2 years, we brought in over $10 million in grant funding through our grant writing support. And certainly we would want to help leverage and do this in partnership with this committee, the CEO's office, and HTIS.
Thank you.
Is there any other public comment before we vote on the motion?
Can I ask if the motion be repeated?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I'd like to repeat the motion. I have a motion by Sheriff Allman, second by Member McGorty, is that correct? To advise the Board of Supervisors that the Measure B Committee recommends that we obtain a project manager to assist the committee with our goals. Is that?
Okay, that's it.
That was verbatim.
Sure,
So
okay, I'm in.
All right.
Can we have a vote? All of those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The vote carries, and we will so recommend this to the supervisors. Moving on to the next item.
It's just committee reports.
Committee reports is the activity in the last month since the previous meeting. Let's see, start with Janine.
So I just wanted to give a quick update, and I think Tom will talk a little bit about it, that we had our first CIT training this month, so I'll let him talk a little bit more about that. And we have another one coming up in April 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Second, I just wanted to let everyone know that Behavioral Health and Recovery Services with Redwood Quality Management Company will be doing a presentation to the Board of Supervisors on March 12th to talk about the ASO system of care and mental health services in our county, and talk about the Lee Kemper 2016 report, how we implemented those recommendations. So there might be some good information on mental health services that you guys might want to listen in on.
I'm happy that we had the first CIT training, and I just wanted to report that I helped NAMI produce a pre-CIT training for consumers and family members to tell their stories at the CIT training. We worked with the Los Angeles County Council of NAMI and did a teleconference with their people who are known nationally for helping do this, and have been instrumental in promoting CIT nationwide.
So Adventist Health approved development in Willits of a local outpatient case management program, or population health program is known by some. Program for targeting high utilizers of services involving the hospitals, law enforcement, behavioral health, and social services. After identification, we'll provide outreach and problem solving to more efficiently and economically use resources. Contact will be established with the patients and to help them accomplish social needs and help us to determine additional services that are required. Ideally, this would involve widespread collaboration between agencies and is underwritten by Partnership Health as well as Adventist Health. We're just beginning to assemble a team at this point, but more to come as this progresses.
Met with coastal stakeholders in the mental health system. It's our fourth meeting. Talked a lot of the existing services and what could be done to change some of the contracts. I won't include you on that, but the stakeholders there are not very happy that they're not going to get crisis care on the coast. So I think that's the fair assumption. And although nothing's been decided, the one thing that has been not talked about is putting a facility on the coast. So I've been contacted by the hospital board, the city manager's been reaching out to others on this committee, and I'm sure talking to others if they're not happy with that. So Sheriff Allman's going to announce that we're having a town hall meeting in the next couple of months. He'll announce the details of that. So we're going to keep meeting, problem solving, troubleshooting some things, but they're getting restless on the coast. I met with the local paper, Dan Anderson from RCS and Dan Jurdy. We just described to the local paper what a status update of what's been happening with Measure B. I've already talked to you about the grant writer, and just FYI, RCS forwarded me the design for the CSU CRT. And there's also a crisis respite that's happening outside of our community that they're partnering with the local hospitals on, that they gave us a budget. So that's it for me.
So thank you to everyone who attended the critical incident training this month, February 11th, or 12th, 13th, 14th. It was attended by 70 people. 40 of those were first responders. This is very, very good. It's a fairly expensive training, but because of stepping up funds and working with Dr. Miller and the Department of Mental Health, we have another one scheduled in April, and then one in the fall, with the goal of getting all first responders trained for critical incident training in the next 2 years. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. It's something that everyone in this room should be very aware of, that it reminds us that we're fighting for a good cause. And yes, Fort Bragg certainly would like more information. I've been working with Tammy Moss Chandler and the mental health director and the city manager of Fort Bragg regarding bringing a forum to Fort Bragg in May. I'm not going to announce a date yet until we get it all nailed down, but next month we will be discussing the forum, and I would certainly like to do something similar to this in Willits. That would also include a possibility of having people voice their opinion, yay or nay, on Old Howard Hospital. But the most important thing, in my opinion, is getting information out there of what the resources are for families that that find themselves beside themselves. Does that make sense? Find themselves beside themselves. So, thank you. That's all. Thank you.
Yeah, so I continue to meet with people in Willits, both public officials and just community people, about what we're doing. I met with Greta Connie, who's the newly elected city council member to Willits. I've met with Supervisor Hashek, who's, as you know, has been coming to a number of these meetings to talk about Measure B. I've had a number of interviews with the Willits newspapers. So, and I've spoken anytime I've been asked to come to the city council. I think you're aware that members of the city council come to these meetings regularly now. There's members of the Willits community. So there's quite a bit of exchange between what we're doing here and the Willits community, which I think is great. And somewhere down the road, I think more of that community meetings as we get more specific about the services that we're recommending, I think will be in order. So I'll continue to do that, and I think we always need more connection between what we're doing and the various parts of the community, and I appreciate what you all from Willits are doing by coming, and I'll continue to reach out in every way that I can.
Thank you. So communications received and filed, is that?
No.
None, okay. That brings us to the end. Is there any further public? Yes, please.
Carol Hester, I want to commend you who are arranging for public forums, because that has not been happening. And then I know that, we televise, we have printed media and radio, but at the same time, sitting in your home, you have no input back and forth. And getting to hear y'all talk is a privilege, and it's wonderful. And I think that kind of communication needs to take place, which is why I was asking about public input into your meetings. You meet once a month for 2 hours. That's not enough time to do anything, y'all. I'm sorry, it's not. So it's an encouragement to me that y'all are using these other ways to try to get input, and I would hope that some of the committee will go to these meetings, wherever it's the coast or Willits or here, so that if questions are asked, that you'll all, you'll have a partner or two there to help respond to the questions. But please keep the communication going, and please keep trying to move forward, because yes, the public is getting a little restless. Thank you.
Hi there, Jerry Gonzalez, currently the mayor of Willits, and thank you for members of the committee that have spoken up about trying to have that forum in Willits. Thank you, Sheriff. I think the position we've taken is there's no project that's actually been put in front of us, and when that happens, then it'd be great to have that input to the community, or give them the opportunity to put that input in, so folks can come in. And I think I've asked maybe one day you could take these meetings on the road. Ms. Machete, is anything funny?
No, sorry, he put his pen up.
Oh, okay.
And then he realized,
Thought maybe I said something funny, so.
No, he realized he didn't want to talk.
Oh, okay. No, I basically, if there's a chance you could take these meetings, whether it's Fort Bragg or Willits, et cetera, give the folks in the community an opportunity to show up and, work this through. I see how you're working through a lot of these things and contracting issues, et cetera, and I think that the public wants something, or they want to see some action, and so I think it's a good opportunity for the public to come in and see you guys at work, because not everybody watches the Board of Supervisor meetings. Some of them do. I'm surprised some people watch our meetings later, because they're put on cable access, and you guys do it on the internet, but not everybody has good internet out here. So thank you again for those of you on the committee that have talked about that.
Thanks, sir.
Tammy Moss Chandler, Director of Health and Human Services. I just wanted to announce for the public and this committee that the Behavioral Health Advisory Board of Mendocino County does meet every month. They actually meet for a full day to further discuss the issues of behavioral health services in Mendocino County, and they do move locations every single month throughout the county. And I'd be happy to share that schedule in the future.
Joe Bradley again, and I'm in Little River. So I'm on the coast, and it's important that you get to the coast. My experience with this county, I sat on some kind of tourism board from 2000 until the end of last year. And I helped get our bid through. And I've sat on boards of all different types, and I've worked with Carmel, and I've worked with the supervisors. And there's the biggest thing is communication to your constituents and the transparency. You're here. What the mayor brought up is excellent. We have this humongous county. We're half the size of the state of Vermont, and we're divided by hills and ocean and rivers. So we have basically 4 quadrants. And what we did on the onset with the Lodging Association, then Visit Mendocino County, all that, our meetings were held on inland and coastal, south and north. And we did that every month. And yes, I know this is your base of operations and it's new and it's been a year, but I really think it's difficult for all of us to get to these meetings, but we have different ways of doing it now. And I think it's really important so people then will see that you're working, because they are not here. And I only know that you've been working because I have been in communication with Sheriff Allman, and I've been intimately involved with what's going on with the county. So thank you.
One of the ways that we've been successful in having our meetings be more accessible is we've been teleconferencing every other month, so maybe that's something that we might consider for Measure B as well.
It needs to go out so the public know that it's there.
It does. Nobody shows up.
Well, sometimes spoon feeding is necessary.
I would just say if there were teleconferencing, a meeting, if we're holding a public meeting in a separate place, there are other Brown Act issues that would have to be considered
We
as
had
well.
to do the same thing.
Yeah.
Very familiar with Brown.
Yeah, just.
It's a pain, but.
I think that brings us to the end. I adjourn the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.